The information in this recording is general in nature and should not be considered personal advice. Please consult a professional and qualified financial advisor to discuss how this information may apply to your personal circumstances. Thanks for listening.
Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Aadil Abbas and I'm a licensed financial advisor. Joining me today is my business partner and co-advisor, Dane Pimble. Some housekeeping first. We like to keep these sessions interactive, so please participate via chat or going off mute when we stop for questions. Feel free to turn on your camera. This will make it a more human experience for all of us. Before we get started, please note any opinions or recommendations we discuss today would be general advice only. If you wish to act upon anything you hear about today, we strongly recommend seeking advice from qualified professionals prior to making a decision. So if this is the first time you're joining one of our workshops, then just a bit about us. At Own Financial Planning, we have one simple philosophy when it comes to money. It's that money is simply the tool that enables you to live your best life. So it is our mission that in all our advice, we aim to align money decisions with key life decisions to help our clients lead their best life. And we do this by implementing an integrated approach as shown on this particular slide. So we don't just talk to our clients about their best life, but help them live their best life by connecting them with relevant experts to improve their financial and life well-being. We ensure our clients' financial plans provide not just for the traditional definition of investing, but investing in the non-financial aspects of their life too. And this we find helps them to start living their best life today and not in some distant future. And the workshop we have this evening is one example of this sort of an integrated approach, because we believe that investing in your health matters because it has both a monetary and a non-monetary impact on your life. So on the left-hand side over here, you can see we have boxes, which I'd like you to think about them as life expectancy. The shaded part represents the time you may have already lived or the time you've spent with your loved ones. And the unshaded part is the approximate time left. Now, the critical point here being that the unshaded part is not even guaranteed. One of the ways you can actually increase the time left is by investing in your health from today itself. And on the right, a very interesting piece of analysis we found, which showed that companies whose CEOs regularly exercise or take care of their health outperform the index by 140%. Now, feel free to draw your own, I would say, conclusions from this data point. So that's little bit about us. We'd like to now like to understand what brings you here today. So we'll start with a quick poll just to get us started. So Dane will bring up a poll. Please answer the question, and then we'll share the results. The question being, what is your primary health goal for this year? Dane, when you have enough responses, feel free to share.
Certainly. Just letting a few more come in first. Right. There we go.
Great. Let's look at the results. Great.
Yes, the vast majority of all of the above. But, so we'll certainly cover all that tonight, won't we, John? But a couple of the other sort of key ones, improving fitness, eating healthier, and reducing stress and losing weight. A couple of responses there as well.
Seems like everyone is here for the right workshop. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce our expert guest today, Dr. John Cummins. Before I hand over to him, I'll just do a brief intro. So Dr. Cummins graduated in 1984 and completed his physician's training, which incorporates an additional 7 years of training in 1992. He trained in adolescent medicine in the US and received a master's in public health as well. The focus of his adolescent medicine training was in particular psychiatry, emotional, and behavioral medicine. Since 2004, he has been running executive medicine and has built up a very successful practice focusing on the prevention of illness. Now, illness is what doctors are paid to treat. So if he's successful, he's paradoxically putting other doctors out of a job. He's also a highly experienced diagnostician and uses both the skills of diagnosing and treating illness when present, as well as detecting illness early and managing before it causes a major problem. He's accompanied in his practice by Claire Reed, practice manager, who has been with the practice for 12 years, Mr. Tim Ruiz, exercise physiologist and lifestyle coach, who is highly trained in nutrition, as well as Dr. Georgia Watt and Dr. Naomi Napper. Dr. Cummins, welcome and thank you for making the time to join us today to share your expertise and insights. I will hand over to you now.
Oh, thanks to Aadil Dane. I thought, like, I want to, I mean, some of you I know and some of you have known me for 20 years. But I hope that all of you, I can give something to all of you that you'll have something actionable at the end of it. It's probably best if I sort of start with my journey to how I got into this. So probably, like, I went through the traditional medical training, I did the physician's training. I thought I'd be a hematologist, did that for a year, but then part of me, wasn't sort of satisfied with just being like a blood work doctor, and so I took a year off against a lot of advice of other specialists. They said, "Oh, you break your career. No one will like you if you go away for a year." Backpack around the world and came back. I thought I'd have a clear plan as what I'd do in medicine, but I came back a bit still lost because there wasn't really a box for prevention.
Why at it like that? But anyway.
Oops, someone's got their mic
Sorry,
on.
we'll just get, I'll just put them on mute there. Sorry.
So anyway, so I travelled, and then I was always interested in prevention, behavioural health, got into the adolescent field, got to my early 40s, came back from the States where I learned a lot, and I couldn't get the adolescent career going. It's really difficult when you're dealing with teens that are, smoking dope and out of control and in jail and all that sort of stuff, working private practice. Looked at getting out of medicine, always had an interest in business. And so I spoke to some doctors that had left, they'd done their MBAs and whatever, but I couldn't actually pursue that because I didn't have the money. I had 3 kids, I was kind of handcuffed to the trade. So I stayed in adult medicine. Then I met this guy called Adrian Burton. So Adrian was a really good quality old school. Think of a family country GP, done a lot in his career, good doctor. And then he retired and sold me the practice in 2004. So I thought, well, look, if I'm going to get in prevention, I better find out a little bit about this. And I've got to admit, I think my disenchantment was, medicine is basically an illness paradigm. So we get very, very good at diagnosing problems and fixing problems. And, that's what doctors will often say to people, I don't want to see you unless you're sick. Why are you having this imaging test done? You don't have any symptoms. I think a lot of doctors don't get the point that the reason you do testing on people is just because they have no symptoms. Because if you wait by the time they have symptoms, it's too late. So people say, look, I know I don't have bowel cancer. And I'll say to them, well, how do you know that? I don't have blood in my stools. Totally irrelevant. If you've got blood in your stools from a bowel cancer, it's big, it's almost certainly spread. You're in big trouble. Anyway, I got into so I had to educate myself. So it wasn't hard. I started going to nutritional conferences and reading, and I was just blown out by the power of prevention in terms of outcomes. So what I mean by blown out is you think of the common diseases, and I'll show some slides in a minute or get Aadil to, but most of us will die from like a heart attack, stroke. And it looks like, well, for the men in this audience, 70% of you won't get a warning. It'll just be bang, it happens, right? You'll drop, like I was holiday in New York and this guy dropped in front of me and I think he died. And you'll either die or survive, and maybe with permanent impairment. So again, don't think you'll get necessarily warnings before your heart attack or stroke. 4 in 10 of this audience statistically will die from that. 3 in 10 of this audience will die from a cancer, which for a lot of cancers you can actually prevent and do something about. So 85% of illness is actually driven by lifestyle. So it's driven by what do you eat, how much do you move, how do you handle stress, and I kind of lump in my simple paradigm of stress. I lump in with that when people get stressed, including me, not currently, but you know, people tend to smoke. People tend to drink too much grog because they're coping with the stress. People tend to overeat. The other thing that happens is that sleep gets disrupted, and I think in the last 10 to 15 years, we've got to realize how important sleep is. And the key, the magic number is between 7 and 9 hours, because certainly if you sleep less, and possibly if you sleep more, but certainly sleeping less it's not good for your longevity. It's certainly not good for your neuronal pathways. One of the theories is that when we form toxic plaque in our brains, just by being alive, the sleep is there to wash out the amyloid plaque, and you seem to get less neurodegeneration. And you know, I remember there was a sort of seminal moment where I was up at Queensland and I'd sign up for this nutrition course. And I learned a lot, but I didn't realise there was a medical cardiac society meeting, and I bumped into one of the specialists from North Shore up in Brisbane. He's walking down the stairs, I'm walking up the stairs. So, g'day, what are you doing? He couldn't understand why I was going to a nutrition course rather than cardiology course at that period of time. So my progress in terms of what I understood about prevention just improved over time, and I've learned an awful lot. There's still an awful lot coming down the chute, and I'll give you a really good example. So a client of mine emails me, I think it was yesterday, and saying, look, he wants to get this Alzheimer's blood test done. Can I arrange the referral? So I said, sure. So the test is going to cost him about $1,500. He's got plenty of money, so the money's not the object at all. But I think, and this is a common trap for people that don't really understand how to read numbers and statistics and things, that when I had a look at the blood test, what the blood test does is it's good as a functional scan at looking at how much amyloid you built up in the brain. But it will give you false reassurance in 70%. It will give you false alarm in about 23%. That's a pretty big number. But it's really designed for people that you think have Alzheimer's based on their story. And you can either do this $1,500 blood test, or you could do the MRI, but both of them will support the fact that you've got plaque in your brain. Problem is, a lot of us will end up with plaque in our brain and we'll never get Alzheimer's. I mean, you know, the whole plaque story has been very sort of complicated. So you got this guy who's, I think he's 43, obviously has no, and I know the guy, he's a client of mine, he doesn't have any symptoms of Alzheimer's. He wants to get the test done, but even if it indicated that he may have amyloid, and it's not binary, it's either strongly positive, strongly negative, or somewhere in the middle, I don't think it's going to do him any good. But that, you know, there's a lot of really interesting stuff coming down the pipeline. And I'll read David Sinclair's books on lifespan and Peter Attia's book on Outlive. And I think the medical world, you know, certainly is in a transformation. But I think a lot of the lay people, understandably, they read stuff and they watch current affair and whatever. And whilst there's a lot of good ideas out there, very few of them actually come to a commercial reality. So I think a lot of what my job is for my clients is to decipher some of this information, make it manageable and usable for them, and tell them what I would do. I mean, if I think something's a good idea, I'm going to do it. And if it's like a financial planner, if your financial planner's not doing it, then maybe you shouldn't do it either. If you're thinking of a like a wealth paradigm. So Aadil, do you want to bump that first slide up?
Sure.
So this is a slide that now, or at least the last 5 years or so, I've been in the habit of showing brand new clients. And so look, this is sort of how we operate. And I also show it to corporations. Actually, Aadil, you may as well just load that slide up with the return keys. So I say to people, look, this practice is a bit different. We're not just medical doctors that treat illness. It's actually a long-term partnership. And so I outlined to them, I showed them that, look, 40% of you or us, you know, will have a heart attack or stroke. And the black parts on the heart attack, stroke are all the traditional risk factors that any doctor goes through. Tell me about your family history. You know, your biggest risk is actually getting older. Males are worse than females for risk. We do an exercise stress test on everyone, and it's not because we're looking for blocked arteries necessarily at all. We're doing it because we want to test someone's fitness. Because if they're the CEO doing their combat sports or whatever, as per the previous slide, you know, fitness is very, very protective. We're looking at your cholesterol, your blood pressure, etc. But the game change for us has actually been imaging the coronary arteries. So we do a CT scan on people. We used to do a CT scan, so it's a CAT scan, and the huge difference is that rather than looking at risk and looking at a finger that's pointing, it actually looks at the outcome itself. So you can tell with really good detail whether someone is actually building up crap in their arteries or not. And it takes all the risk out of the equation. You've either got plaque or you've not, and then you can quantitate it according to the calcium score. So I can get someone like me in who's, you know, 20, no, I'm not 25, but so I can get a 40-year-old in and tell them whether their arteries are like a 60-year-old or not all the time. So I used to do it in men at 60, women at 70. Then I did go to a Cardiac Society meeting a few years ago, and I was shocked at how robust this information is. So now we do it at men at 50 and women at 60. We do it younger. We have had in the practice in 20 years, I think 4 heart attacks. They were all men, and they were all men that knew they had plaque, would suggest that they take some medication as well as a diet and lifestyle. They all didn't for whatever reason. They had a heart attack, and then they thought it was probably a good idea to take it. I've seen plaque go backwards with good intervention, and that's been recorded. But this has been a game changer for us. And I would cut any male that's 50 or female that's 60 that hasn't had one of these things done, rush off and get it straight away. You might say to me, but I have no symptoms. It doesn't actually matter. 1 in 8 people we send off for this who have really good cholesterol and blood pressure and fit as anything, blah, 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 they got rubbish in their arteries, and they've got sometimes extreme rubbish, and you think you don't deserve that, the athletes. The 1 in 8 missing link is almost invariably stress, basically. So basically that's a game changer. Then I move to the right side and say, well, look, let's look at the big 6 cancers, right? So the commonest cancers, and you'll see this on television advertising now, the biggest one is still lung cancer. So if you smoke and you're over 55 and you've smoked within the last 12 years, 20 a day, we would screen you with a CT scan. Why? Because you can drop death by 20%. With this particular practice, you know, we'd be likely to get 2 smokers in a year. So we don't send people off for that much. Bowel cancer, it's a big one. We're seeing lots of young people in their 40s. Sorry, not personally, but kind of had a woman that was 40 come to me 3 months ago, said I had bowel cancer last year, please check with the rest of me. I had a guy who was 45, came in about 3 weeks ago, saying my wife's just been diagnosed with bowel cancer spread throughout her body. She's 49, I'm 45, I've got 3 kids, make sure I'm going to survive. Got a client of mine whose daughter's husband just died a few months ago, 34, from bowel cancer. So we start now doing bowel cancer screening in your 40s. And what I would say is do an annual stool test every year, not every 2 years. The government's recently brought the age from 50 down to 45. Why is it every 2 years? I looked it up. Best I can tell, it's for cost. The government, it's half the cost for them. And plus, the more you do it, the more times you find blood, the more colonoscopies you've got to do. So it becomes a cost exercise. But I'm still a huge fan of doing a colonoscopy. So when probably 50, why not just stick with the stool test? Well, the stool test is going to catch about 75% of bowel cancers in an early stage, but not 100. You'll miss 1 in 4. The colonoscopy 95% plus. The stool test won't pick up the polyps. All bowel cancer begin with a polyp. If you can see the polyp with the colonoscopy and you get the polyp taken out, you should never get a bowel cancer. So it's a bit more of a hassle. It's a bit more fiddly, but you can definitely still get a colonoscopy. If your colon is clear, you could probably not have another one for about 8 to 10 years or so. But if you've got polyps, and I've had 32-year-olds with 20, 30 polyps in one go, then you know when your next colonoscopy is going to be. The prostate cancer, there's you know, like the GP college is a bit reluctant to do it. It's a lifesaver. You know, we've diagnosed lots of prostate cancer in the practice because of the rate of change of prostate blood test. We've had no deaths from prostate cancer. We've had a lot of people with near misses. I would say for you guys, including me, get a PSA done once a year at least. Well, once a year, that's sufficient actually. Breast cancer in women, I always tell a woman, look, if you notice something in your body, then put your hand up no matter what age you are. But generally speaking, I would do a mammogram and an ultrasound. I would start at 50, maybe 40s. That's a conversation because there is a little bit of risk with everything. But say with breast cancer, there's some literature saying that if you radiate enough women with mammography, you'll cause some cancers. And you've got to biopsy about 9 women to find the one cancer. So the other 9 are left traumatized and anxious in the healthcare system. But certainly from 50 to 75, the evidence is very robust. Lymphoma, melanoma, we examine people. So we find a few skin cancers, a few melanomas from time to time. Probably only had about 4 lymphomas in the last 20 years. So if we move down to that third pie, you know, all the other causes, we examine people. So we check your liver and all that sort of stuff. Big part of it, though, is down the bottom, is coaching people to follow the Mediterranean diet, which I'll talk about in a minute, to do the exercise and the right types of exercise. And these two are what Tim is very good at, our exercise physiologist, and just sort of ask people about their stress and things like that. To my viewpoint, if you if you had one question to ask someone aside from are you stressed, forget about that. Does anyone have any idea what I reckon the one question would be to ask people whether they're coping with life or not? Just put on the chat or jump in.
Yeah, feel free to drop it in the chat if you like. There's always an air of shyness initially, and once someone responds, we get a
yeah. Well, listen, I tell you what it is. I reckon it's sleep. You know, if you can put yourself to sleep fairly quickly and stay asleep all night, then from my viewpoint, you know, you're coping. Now, some people have chronic sleep problems. That doesn't count as much. But if I'm normally able to sleep within 10 or 15 minutes or 20 or whatever, and normally stay asleep all night, or, you know, unless I go to the toilet once in the middle of the night or something, then I'm coping with life. But almost invariably, people that are stressed, they either can't fall asleep, but perhaps more commonly, they're waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, because we have a 90-minute sleep cycle. And it's those periods where you're rising up out of deep sleep again, that your brain just kicks in because it's worried, and then you'll kick yourself into wakefulness and then you can't sleep again. So, you know, I always ask people how you're sleeping, because for me, it's just a good indicator of how they're coping with life. Aadil, do you have that next slide, please?
Sure. Is this the one?
Yeah, well, that'll do. So this is a hugely busy slide, but I'll tell you what's really cool about it. It was published in January this year in the European Heart Journal, and it was published by a bunch of Australians. And really the subtitle was, you know, a lifestyle for reducing heart attack or stroke, but it's really a lifestyle for longevity. And so if you look up the top, you've got mind health on the left. Actually, can you see my cursor moving on the slide or not, Aadil?
No.
That's okay. That's okay. So you've got mind health, you've got exercise, dietary restriction, healthy diet. And this is a lot of this you'll find in these blue zones, which are, you know, 5 places around the world where people, you know, fairly consistently live to over 100. So from a mind health viewpoint, and I think this is where our culture pays least attention, is, you know, how do you keep yourself in what's the word, like a stable, basically, mind where you're not getting too stressed, nor are you bored and understimulated. And it has a lot to do with your connection in the world. I mean, do you have, are you part of a family or a tribe? And in fact, the Surgeon General has raised loneliness as a huge public health policy globally, but certainly in the US. He reckons that loneliness is probably as toxic to your life as smoking. The average smoker loses 13 years. That's 1/7 of your life. And so if you're a smoker, and maybe I should say if you're lonely, you're going to lose 1/7 of your life. That's like having a Sunday ripped out of every week. Every week, someone's taking a Sunday out of the week right now. That's 1/7. So, I like to see that people have a fairly rounded existence, that they belong to a group, they're into maybe some art or meditation or something, or nature, whatever it is. But all of this sort of stuff, what it basically does is it decreases those those pink catecholamines, cortisol. That's all your stress sort of paradigm there. If you move across to exercise training, like 20 years ago, what was exercise? It was just going for a run 3-4 times a week. But increasingly, we're recognizing that it's not just getting your heart rate up. You've really got to do some resistance training. Now, if you're a farmer and you're moving around, bales of hay, and you're pushing cows to the side, and you're opening gates and lifting things, you're probably going to get that resistance training as part of your daily life. But there's not many of us that do that anymore. So it does obligate us either to go to the gym, or maybe do some Pilates, or work with rubber bands or something. So why is resistance training important? Well, first of all, it maintains muscle bulk. And what muscle is, it's a huge storehouse for sugar. So the more muscle you have, the less likely the sugar is going to be high in the blood, because it's stored in the muscle. The other thing that muscle is it's very metabolically active. So it's harder for you to put on weight, fat that is, if you've got a lot of muscle bulk, because it's churning, it's like it's stoking the fire of metabolism. And so when you eat calories, basically the calories are being burned because of the metabolic rate. So we would say that aerobically, you need to get your heart rate up probably 150 minutes a week minimum, which is 3 lots of 50-minute sessions of a brisk walk or a run or a bike or something, or it could be 5 lots of 30 minutes. But you got to do 2 or 3 sessions of resistance training where you're moving your major muscle groups as well. And I tell you what, guys, from a longevity viewpoint, it's probably the most important thing you can do. And the older you get, logarithmically, the more you've got to do to maintain that. Oh, by the way, I did this post on LinkedIn. The oldest guy in the marathon on Sunday, and it was around my area, the guy was 90. He ran a marathon in 6 hours. He started doing marathons at the age of 78, and he's done about 20, which is about 1.5 per year. It just blows my mind what some people. I think we're a lot more capable of things than we believe we are, and I think we stop pushing ourselves and we stop setting hard goals for ourselves way too early in life. So exercise training, if you want to live. And I ask people, what do you want to do? Do you want to live to 100? Almost everyone says, no, I don't. But what I do want to do is have a lot of high quality of life, a lot of vitality, a lot of vigor whilst I am alive. If I get to 100, and I think what people want to do is have a body that's about 20 years younger than their chronological age. They want to, basically be able to do things that people 20 years younger can do. And I would argue, if you want to do that, you've got to do what people 20 years younger do now to maintain that youthfulness and that belief in your own body and physiology. The dietary restriction is don't get fat. Eat under eat or eat just to maintain your metabolism. So that means eat less, which is calorie restriction. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you look at protein restriction, when you look at the blue zones that live around the world, they don't eat much protein. And I haven't sorted this out, because the whole Western dietary paradigm has been and is, and has been for the past 5, maybe 10 years, maybe longer. They say you've got to eat more protein as you get older. Protein for brain health, protein possibly anthropologically led to greater human brain size, protein for muscle mass. So I'm a bit conflicted. I don't know whether the answer is to don't eat much protein, or it may be don't eat much meat protein, have a lot of plant protein from legumes and tofu and things instead. But that one's still a question mark. And then with the healthy diet, we'll get into that in a minute, but what the healthy diet is, eat a massive amount of fiber. Our culture doesn't. we eat carbs instead of fibre, and carbs and fibre aren't the same thing. So you know, when I say fibre, I mean things like psyllium, I mean legumes, I mean, you know, multi-grain bread's got carbs in it, but also has fibre. I mean, certain types of vegetables. What I would do is challenge you all to have a day where you get 30 grams of fibre in. How would you know that? You'd have to look it up on the internet. But I did it once, and I had to be really strategic about what I ate. Why would you want to have so much fibre? First of all, it fills you up so you don't feel hungry, so you're less likely to overeat. It'll drop your cholesterol by 10 to 15% because the fibre stops it being absorbed. Super good for bowel cancer prevention because it scrapes the colon the whole way through and gets rid of all the toxins. The branched chain amino acids, they're a certain type of protein that you don't want to get. Less salt. So how do you get less salt? Don't eat stuff in supermarkets or in packages or boxes. You know, if you can prep your own food and don't add salt to food, don't add salt, you're going to have a very low salt diet. We had a guy in the other day who was eating a packaged meal thing, and your salt intake should be somewhere between about 1.5 to 2 grams a day. He was getting that in one packet of food. We looked up an alternative. He was getting 1.2 grams. An alternative packet of food had 25% of his salt intake. So one of the things that we teach people to do is, in my theory, is if you're eating food that has a food label on it, don't, because you're in trouble already just by the fact it's got a food label. It means the government's, you know, it's going to be processed or ultra processed. But at least if it has a label, get used to reading the label so you know what's in the stuff. And then decrease short chain fatty acids, increase medium chain fatty acids. So we avoid oils. There are some really healthy oils that you must get into your diet. Nuts, olive oils, and salmon would be some really good example. Avocado oil. And phytochemicals are basically what you want with plant food is you want a massive variety of colors, because, for example, blueberries, blackberries, very good for brain. You've got beta carotene that's found in pumpkins and carrots, which is, you know, very good as an antioxidant. So you want to eat plants that are hugely varied. Now, the rest of the slide I'm not going to talk to, it's busy, but if you do the orange things up the top, you will end up with less cancers, less strokes, less diabetes, less fatty liver. What's under your control is the stuff up the top, which comes naturally to all of the blue zone people, for example. Next one, Aadil. By the way, does anyone have any questions now, even if you want to jump on the mic for a sec?
I might jump in with one there, John. We've got a lot of clients, combination of retirees and busy working professionals, often eating out a lot or grabbing something at the food court and whatnot. Have you got any? Obviously, the optimal way is to prepare your own food at home, which is the ideal. Do you have any sort of tips or suggestions as to what people can do when they are out and about?
Well, one thing would be don't go out and about. I mean, there was a paper published that showed a very clear linear association between the number of social business eating sessions per week and how much plaque was on the arteries, right? So first thing is acknowledging that when you eat out, you've lost control of what's in your food, and it's going to be bad for you. But yes, there are shades of bad. So if like I tell you, COVID, the second round of COVID was brilliant, because what it showed us was people stopped going to food courts. So generally people's dinners are fairly healthy if they're at home. People's breakfasts are almost invariably fairly healthy. But what a lot of the business people fall foul of in the city is going out to food courts all the time and buying lunches. When people started not going to food courts for, you know, because they were shut or whatever, they started having their lunches at home. They got a lot healthier, we noticed. Their cholesterols went down, their weight went down. So if you work in the city and you want to avoid going to food court, bring last night's dinner in, you know, do the, you know, the leftovers. They're usually healthy. If I go to a food court or a restaurant, what I'm hunting for is a plate. Now, we'll go through the plate in a sec, but I want something that's got a ton of plant food. So if I'm going to a restaurant, I will, and then sometimes I'm naughty, but usually I will do something like order it. Like my go-to will be fish. My go-to will be salad and or vegetables. If I'm in a food court, I will look for things. I'd go for a salad bar, like soul food is really good. If they ask me, look, do you want as the base rice or shredded cabbage? I'd go with shredded cabbage because I'm not into white rice. I think it's pretty bad for me. And the problem with all these carbs, like the rice, the bread, the noodles, is they crowd out the vegetables that you should be eating, the legumes that you should be eating. Guzman and Gomez, if I gave that a plug, isn't bad because you've often got I think barramundi, they've got legumes, they've got avocado. But I'm hunting for food where it's got a lot of plant food. It may have some fiber in it. The protein is not going to be a red meat. It's going to be ideally a chicken breast or a fish. And if there's oils, they're going to be healthy oils like avocado or olive oil. And you can do it. And it still can taste pretty good.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. And we've got a question from Steve from the audience. Steve's mentioned that he does weight training at the gym and he takes a daily BCAA supplement. You'll have to educate me on that one. And he said he mentioned that the literature was that we need more amino acids. And what he wants to know is this just kind of slick marketing, or should he stop taking his BCAA supplements, or is it worthwhile to continue?
What's in it, Steve? I don't know that.
You can come off mute if you like, Steve, if you wanted to comment.
So it's just it's something that I get from Chemist Warehouse. It's a powder form, and it has
Don't take it. I'll tell you now.
Don't take it.
I tell you, Steve. Tim's got he's not here now, but he's got a website where they go through the evidence for supplements and things, and it's really cool. But there's very few people that I think need to take a supplement. You're probably better off having a couple of boiled eggs, to be honest, in terms of the protein left, right?
Okay.
I mean, first of all, think about it. It's in a package. It'll have a barcode. It'll have ingredients in it. It's going to have processed and ultra-processed food in it. And, something like 50% of US food is now ultra-processed. So it's not just got things to keep things healthy inside a tin like sardines. They've got emulsifiers, additives, a whole lot of, they've got lots of, basically lettuce and things in the ingredients, which are all chemically added. I wouldn't touch it. The other thing which I was going to mention, the only supplements that I could think of that I would recommend to people would be, if you don't eat fish 3 times a week, you could think about taking a fish oil tablet, and there's very little harm with that, at 1 a day. If you are very vitamin D deficient, you could think about taking vitamin D, but just go and get more sun. I think we can't all become a bit sun phobic. There's evidence that some of the vitamins can cause harm. For example, if you're a smoker, this is many years ago, and you take beta-carotene, your risk of lung cancer allegedly is increased. If you're a woman that's taking iron that doesn't need it, then her risk of a negative outcome was increased. I think it was cancers. I don't recall. So they're not all benign. I got a guy who had this weird rash and his whole body flared up with this. No one could figure it out until they figured out that his wife was pumping him full of supplements, and he stopped the supplements and this weird rash disappeared. I've seen a woman almost kill herself with vitamin A poisoning. She got a profound hepatitis, was diagnosed with a liver biopsy. So I'm not a fan of supplements and creatine powders and things like that.
Because that's something else I also take, and hydrolyzed protein after my workouts and all that. I'm a big.
Mate, just give the money to me. I'd be happy.
Thanks for the question, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, John.
John, I'm also just in terms of mindful of time, like we are.
Yeah, can we get down to that? Maybe the cancer slide.
Cancer slide. Yep, sure.
About 10 to 15 minutes, John.
Okay.
Give me a second. I'll have to bring up the cancer slide. I'll bring it up.
This is it will be when we find it. It's a busy slide, but again, what I'm really surprised at just how much cancer is preventable. So probably 40% of all cancer is preventable. And it depends a bit on which type of cancer. So can you, yeah, good on you. Yeah. Okay, hard to read, but let me show you. So you see the breast cancer in the top right. Biggest, so what the skinny thing is how prevalent the cancer is. The chunky bit is how much you can prevent, and the color coding is the gender. So almost no men get breast cancer. You can probably stop about 20% in women. And the risk factors are being overweight, alcohol. I can't read my own slide there. Can you read that, Aadil?
I'll have to squint as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, normally it's alcohol. HRT is the one after, inactivity is the one after. Look at bowel cancer on the left there. What are the big risk factors? You could probably stop half of all bowel cancer: red meat, being overweight, low fiber diet, alcohol, tobacco. Prostate cancer, we don't know what causes it. It's not a lifestyle cancer, so we don't know how to prevent it. What I often say to people is, if you look down the bottom, the size of the bubble, starting with tobacco, and where it's placed, obviously, which is related to size, gives you the weighting of what these lifestyle behaviours can contribute. Worst thing you can do is smoke. Have a look at the others though. Being overweight, followed by a low fruit and veg diet, followed by alcohol. So there's a lot of people that carry some weight, don't have a great diet, drink a bit too much. If you added all those together, it's probably a bigger risk as smoking. Then if you go down to, there's red meat there, which is almost exclusively a colon cancer risk. Radiation, we don't want to be giving people too many CT scans in their life. Low fiber diet goes with low fruit and veg, because typically fruit and veg carries the fiber, and then being inactive. And so the message is you cannot stop all cancer, but you can probably stop about 40%, which is an awful lot of lives, saved if people did the right thing. Now, there's a question about occupation. So occupation is relatively cancer specific. There's, so for example, lung cancer. If you're a builder and get exposed to asbestos, you've got a high risk of getting a mesothelioma, for example. If you're bladder cancer, it was classically recognised to be linked with certain factory workers, certain exposure to certain chemicals, for example. What are other cancer? Breast cancer, if you're a radiographer taking x-rays all day long, even though you're shielded with lead sort of protection, you've got a radiation tag there, you're more likely to get exposed to radiation, certain cancers, including breast cancer. So the occupation depends on which cancer and what you're exposed to. In my profession, I won't be exposed to too much. But I reckon if I was doing those toenails, when you walk past those podiatry shops in Oxford Street and you see the chemicals they're exposed to, I would have some concerns if I was one of those young ladies as to what's going to happen to me in 20, 30 years. So it's called deceptive. Aadil, I think, can you go back to the previous one? And there were just some bullet points that I typed out
Can do.
Before, just to try and keep things really simple.
Sure. Give me 1 second. I'll bring up those slides again.
So you go back to that last one that you had. Sorry, Aadil.
This one? How to live to 100?
Yeah. No, the one before, sorry.
The one before.
That one, yeah. So, I mean, look, for all of us, stay as lean as you can. It's a challenge, it's a struggle. I struggle with it. But if you can keep a thin waist plus a really good muscle mass, and you can, we do muscle mass measurements here. You can get it done, I'm sure, locally, because you could be a skinny fat. So that means that you can have a wonderful figure, not have a lot of muscle, have a lot of fat that hides the muscle, but still look good in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. It doesn't mean that your body fat ratio is optimized, but keep the strength training up. Don't overeat. and try and keep your body composition in a healthy range. Eat like a Mediterranean with no processed food. Actually, I'll come back to that. There's a lot of talk about fasting. Fasting is really good for you. It stresses your body. Your body in this type of physical stress, it likes it, because what your body does when it's stressed is it mops up all the dead cells, all the breakages in DNA and things. David Sinclair talks a lot about it. I have been for the last several months or so. I mean, I don't eat lately past 8 or before 11, and then sometimes, like last week, I didn't eat from Tuesday night till Thursday morning, because I have no problem with fasting. I think it can be a very good option. Probably any alcohol is bad for you. It's not, if you do the absolute risk, it's not a huge risk, but the problem with alcohol is it's a poison. From a cancer viewpoint, think of where people get cancers with an alcohol. They get it in their pharynx because it goes down there. They get it cancer in their esophagus because it goes down your gullet. They get it in your colon because it goes to the colon. They get liver cancer because it gets metabolized in the liver. They get laryngeal cancer, I suspect, because you're breathing out the alcohol fumes like they do when they breathalyze you. And then women get breast cancer with alcohol. It's probably 10% of all breast cancers in the world. Because alcohol basically alters your estrogen metabolism, and a high estrogen predisposes women to breast cancer. You want to move every day, bare minimum 30 minutes. I mean, I generally do 3 hours a week or so or more, but that's the bare minimum. And I think people say, well, I play golf twice a week. Sorry, it just doesn't cut the mustard. You know, golf is not exercise. It's a bit of a walk, but it's not what I call exercise. Sorry, Bill. Next one.
Just
There
pause
was
there
one
briefly.
question, I think, John.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ros, one of our clients, just mentioned a lot of retirees have got good figures, but tummy fat's a bit of a hard one to tackle. Any tips there, John?
I totally agree with that. It's look, I just had a session today with a woman. It's always doable, but there's no doubt losing weight, losing tummy fat is hard. And I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I think you got to figure out, for a lot of people, I think most of us are probably, including me, kid ourselves. We can do. We just got to push that switch in your brain, and it's knowing what to eat and then having absolute consistency. And that's what a lot of us struggle with, right? But for some people, they cause themselves so much angst because they're 4 or 5 kilos over, where it's not causing their metabolism that much damage, that sometimes you got to say, look, just soften up, just don't put so much pressure on yourself, and don't aim to add any weight, and just do the best you can. So, how we manage the difficult to lose weight people is we just have we have a great nutritionist. So if you know someone that wants to see a great nutritionist in Sydney, then we would be happy to give you her name. And again, not absolute guarantee, but there are people I've sent to her that have been the thinnest I've known them in 20 years. But I totally agree, Ros. It's if it was easy, Ozempic wouldn't be wouldn't be turning the Danish economy at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way,
Ros?
Ozempic is a bad idea for almost everyone that's taking it. Oh yeah, good quality sleep, obviously. I had a guy today, first guy who I've ever met, who said he's come off the vaping, is a 51-year-old. I said, good on you, man. I said, what did you do? He said, he now inhales nicotine from a Nicorette thing. I said, mate, you could do that till the cows come home. I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I would have a problem with vaping and certainly smoking. But it's a really clever marketing thing, the vape. Because I said to him, think about it. Just watching the time, I haven't got a twitch. To smoke, you need a packet of cigarettes or a pouch, and you need a cigarette lighter or a match. You need a space to smoke, like go outside. You need to have a bit of a thick hide because people will hate you and probably spit at you in the streets for smoking. And you need to know where to put your cigarette butts. With a vape, it comes in a brightly coloured thing, probably lasts a couple of thousand goes. You can just have one vape in a corner, no one really knows or cares, and it just slips in your pocket again. It's a really cleverly designed tool. And he says he was waking up in the middle of the night having a vape because he was so nicotine dependent. So anyway, I think this thing about your mind is so important. Having downtime, getting into nature. What do you do to, you know, we have so much busyness in our brain that it's actually bad for our neuronal state. If you listen to a lady called Barbara Chapman. So what do? I go to Centennial Park a lot. I meditate every day. I notice when I'm winding myself up, and then I purposely slow myself down. So that sort of segues into friendships and compassion. I think one of the biggest stress relievers, I think, is, for example, having a good marriage. You know, I think having a wide circle of friends, being part of a church or a spiritual group we know is protective. And then find a physician that basically is into sort of prevention and will give you time to think about your situation personally, rather than, you know, the 6-minute consult isn't working. I'll tell you what, Medicare 1975 was designed for people with one problem. Doc, I got a sore knee. Doc, I got blood pressure. Doc, I got a thing on my arm. Now we're all living older with multiple problems. And the Medicare system and the poor old doctors just can't cope. You know, who can deal with 4 or 5 issues in 6 minutes? No one. So we can probably we can stop there. Well, in terms of me talking, the Mediterranean diet, I had a slide. Look, what it is briefly, it's a wide variety of plant food to cover half the plate. It's a healthy protein, which is not red meat. It'll be fish or chicken breast, which should take up about a quarter of your plate. It's an eighth of your plate with a carb or a grain that's high quality. So what I mean is multi-grain bread versus white bread, quinoa, maybe even brown rice versus white rice. You can get a legume pasta instead of like a regular pasta. It's called the glycemic index, but our problem in our culture is we're very carb heavy and we don't get enough of the other stuff, and that's what drives a lot of the problems. Not all the problems. But
if I understand it right, John, the CSIRO's got a Mediterranean diet guide that you can.
Yeah, they're aligned with that whole concept. You know, and you just need to follow those principles. You don't have to say I'm doing the Mediterranean diet. I mean, and you just got to make it work in our culture, and I think we can. So I'll wait for anyone that may have a question or not. I think my clients are online that I can see. Hopefully they've heard all this before, but hopefully got something out of it.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Dr. Cummins, for your insight. I think maybe we'll give it a few. We'll maybe wait for a minute or two and see if somebody has questions. Otherwise, I think I will hand over to Dane to kind of to be able to bring us home with the last section of the presentation.
Roz, definitely will certainly be sharing the slides with you after this. That's an easy one. Peter mentioned, it's a question for you, John. You mentioned David Sinclair. What are your thoughts about supplementing with NMN and antioxidants as we age?
I did it, I'll confess. My approach to this sort of stuff is what I was intrigued about his story was that he said his dad, who was clearly getting older, had a dramatic new lease of life in it. And David, it's interesting. So he's an Australian researcher, and you got to kind of like got him. You got Huberman, for example. A lot of these people have never treated a patient, so I think you got to bear that in mind a bit. And what David's very good at is looking at stuff under a microscope and cells. And I think he's been excellent in raising the world's awareness of what drives aging and can we slow it down. So I'm not criticising him at all. And when he talks about his supplements, he has a disclosure. He says, look, I own some of these companies, and he's got a vested interest. And he says he's not telling us to do it. He said this is what he does, this is what his father does, or whatever. So I didn't buy some from him, but I bought some NMN and some resveratrol and things like that. Took it for a while. Didn't feel any difference. I don't know whether they do harm if you take them long term. So I think if you take something and it really improves your quality of life, then sure, you know, there's probably a tiny risk, but maybe zero risk, we don't know. But I'm not. I tell you one thing that I've spoken to some of my clients about is actually metformin. So metformin has been around for a while. It's a 50 to 60-year-old diabetic drug that improves your body's ability to use insulin. And what that does is it drives blood sugar level down. And we know that if you have sugar floating around in your bloodstream too high for too long, it causes accelerated aging. And it's interesting when you look at, there are studies done looking at diabetics treated with metformin versus those without. Those on metformin didn't die as much. And the reason they didn't die was not so much to do with their sugars, but they got less cancer. And it could be because, with diabetes, you can get an insulin-like growth factor that's released. Think of it, what's a cancer? It's an uncontrolled growth of cells. You don't want a growth factor in there pushing things. So I think the one thing that I would say to my clients, and I don't take it myself yet, for no great reasons. But I would think about metformin, which brings you to, I've also picked up this book Life Force by Tony Robbins, but there's a lot of stuff, in terms of injecting peptides and things that you hear of that I would just be very wary of. And Ozempic is a peptide. That's an injectable peptide like the others. So it's kind of like buyer beware, but I try things from time to time, but unless I notice a big difference in me, then I usually abandon them. Yeah. By the way, I'm much more active on LinkedIn the last 12 months. So I usually post something 2 or 3 or 4 times a week that's educational. So you can always get hold of me there if you would like. So happy. I don't know. We're probably going to get kicked off soon, aren't we, Aadil? Because it's the timeline of Zoom.
We've got a few more minutes. So what I'll do is I think we've got your contact details here on the slide. And of course, we'll send the slide deck around for people who want to look at the material, want to kind of speak to you as well, so they can access you and can kind of get in touch. I'll get just Dane to maybe just kind of try and, I'll just get Dane to help us out with the final section.
Thanks, Aadil. Thanks very much, everyone, for taking the time out tonight. So like Aadil mentioned at the beginning of the session, at Own Financial Planning, we've got one very simple mission. That's to help our clients live their best life. Yes, that means life's more than money. And money, obviously, we're financial planners, so we work in this world. Yes, we do all the standard stuff that planners do, but essentially money is a tool that enables you to live your best life and leave a legacy. So in all of our advice, we aim to align your money decisions with your life intentions. And your physical health is a very important part of living a fulfilled life. It's certainly something I'm personally focused on this year, having let it go for a few years. And so we trust you. You'll get a lot of value from Dr. Cummins tonight, and appreciate your time, John. And this is an example of how we help surround our clients with the right professionals to help in all areas of their life, not just the money parts. And the basis behind our advice approach is centered on Dr. Margaret Swarbrick's research on the 8 dimensions of well-being. And so we believe that overall well-being is a healthy approach to living. And it could mean a lot of things, such as doing purposeful work, enjoying good relationships, eating well but healthy with a Mediterranean diet, as John's mentioned, having a work-life balance, and of course, financial freedom. And it's different for everyone. And as part of preparing your advice, we aim to find out what that means for you. So we start by understanding where you are at in life today and what your priorities are right now. So the Your Life survey that we share with all of our new clients it's a questionnaire that's used to find out and measure what's important to you and to understand how you feel and that you're currently tracking. And so once we understand the areas of your life that you need immediate support with, we then start to dig a little deeper. And so through that discovery process, it helps you and us to identify what's important to you as an individual and at a household level through a values exercise. So our aim through that's to empower you to live your best life by aligning your wealth to your values. Then we work with you to set SMART goals. And for those that don't know, that SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For example, if one of your values is to improve your physical health, A smart goal could be to invest in preventative health measures, such as those offered at Dr. Cummins' clinic, or perhaps some personal training or a combination of all of the above. And so we know, if it was easy to live your best life, everyone would be doing it. And so when life does become unpredictable, and we can help you adapt your plan to ensure that you're continuing to live well. And so we have a best life modeling tool that we work with that it lets you know, that you're going to be okay in the future, in retirement, or if you're already there, right now, or what we need to focus on that needs the most attention in order for you to have that comfort. We do aim to keep you accountable. We work in partnership with you to create your best life, and through our portal, you can log in and access that plan anywhere at any time. It means you can track your tasks and goals, upload any documents, and share with us as your advisors, or even test out different scenarios to see how they're going to impact that best life plan. So for those of you who aren't already clients with us, we invite you to take that first step in unlocking better conversations about money. I'll invite you to take our short assessment that helps you get to the heart of what it's all for, and so you can have more meaningful conversations about life and tying your investing to those life goals. You'll get your results instantly. It's a short survey, 5 to 10 minutes. Once done, just make sure you hit save. Aadil should have the QR code and the link on the screen. Is it possible to pop that in the chat as well, Aadil?
I'll do that now. Yep,
We'll
definitely.
certainly send all of this out to you in the follow-up tomorrow as well. And then I'll just give you a moment for that, Aadil.
Yep.
And so, just before we wrap up, just want to let you know, we run these workshops every month, and appreciate your time tonight, John. In terms of the guests that we've got coming up next month, we're delighted to host our business partner, Rory Sercombe from Own Home Loans. He's going to discuss the opportunities that currently exist in the lending environment. In November, we're going to be hosting our first annual State of the Markets conference. So that's going to have a range of discussions around the economy and markets with a panel of experts.
That's pretty much it, Dane.
Thank you very much. And that completes the formal part of the workshop. John, again, thank you from both Aadil and myself, and for your time and wisdom tonight, and for all of you that have listened in investing that time with us. So we hope you all got some practical tips that you can take away and implement. If anyone wants to hang around, we can have a couple of minutes for questions. But for those that are jumping off, really appreciate your time. And John, thank you once again.
Pleasure. I hope you got something from the guys.
I know I certainly did. I got to get that blood test to your offices.
Yes.
Something
It's
that
really interesting to learn about the importance of resistance training,
The
John.
training.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So important.
Mm.
All right. See you guys. Have a good
Thanks
evening.
very much.
Look after yourselves.
Everyone.
Enjoy your evening, everyone.